Okay, there we go.
All
All right, just a little background. This is an interview for my PRW 100 class, which is Introduction to Professional Writing, because I am indeed a new media or professional writing and new media major at the lovely scenic Grand Canyon University. Um, what this entails is it's a survey major of all the different types of relevant modern writing, from journalism to copywriting to grant writing to fiction writing, anything that's going on right now in print and online media. This is what we're doing. So for this class, our focus is doing an interview and writing about the interview. We had to choose someone who was a professional writer and do a little digging into their background and come up with some questions to ask them that would be relevant to things going on in the class. I chose you because I've been aware of you for a long time. We've haven't talked as long as I've been aware of you, but yeah, you caught my eye and then you caught my mind. Is how we'll phrase that.
Yeah.
You wear a lot of hats, and I mentioned that over the course of
Yep.
class discussions, and that's one of
Hmm.
the things I wanted to talk to you about because
Hmm.
as a fiction writer, you know, um, branding and marketing is so important for us
Hmm.
because traditional publishers are only going to do so much, so we have
Right.
to do more. um the other interesting thing that I wanted to touch on, we're actually going to touch
Hmm.
on that first because this is like part of your story, is
Sure.
that your name is not really Cornelia Blackmore.
No.
It is a nom de plume, if you will.
Edie.
And that is an option that many writers choose on their paths. It was
Hmm.
something that was suggested to me at one time, but I chose not
Okay.
to because it's like I'm obsessed with taking control of my narrative. But
Sense.
for the sake of everybody in the class and the lovely viewing public at home, um what made you choose a pen name, that pen name, and what steps would a writer have to take to, get professionally published under a pen name?
I truly and gratefully, I really do appreciate this question. And also, thank you again for choosing me to be interviewed. Again, I always appreciate opportunities like these. And just shout out, I can't wait till I'm in a space to do the same. But I just wanted to put that out there. But to answer your question, the reason I chose the pen name at the time was because I was in the process of kind of healing myself, healing my wounds, if you will. And that was why I turned to writing. And because I was writing a lot of stories that I was purging a lot of that out, put it that way. And because I was in the purging process, I was like, well, shit, I don't want anyone to like know that it was no dead ass. I was like, I don't want anyone to know that it was me. Right. So that was the purpose behind coming up with a pen name. Now, I'll be completely honest with you. I use a name generator. My hand to God. I went to a website and I can't remember what it's called, but I used a name generator. And at some point, I mean, there were two, it was just a random draw. Two completely different lists. Like one just had a list of like potential last names and one had a list of potential first names. And I was like, I saw Blackmore as the first name. And then I saw Cornelia at some point, like with the K in it. And I was like, that's it. That's the name right there. And that was what kind of birthed my pen name at that point. Steps that it takes to become a self-published author. There's a multitude of ways that I can answer this question. Um, but again, that has to go with one, your budget level, and two, the the quality it is that you wish to put out. So I have to start there first. But like I said, I can go on and on about that one. But if you choose to go, and I like to call it the broke busted way, which is fine. I mean, please, by all means, do what works for you. But if it's the broke busted way, would be just writing the manuscript, doing like, base edits or something like that, and then just hitting publish. Um, or like getting, a random book cover or something like that. Um, that is the cheapest way to go about it. But again, there is another route that costs much. It is much more costly, which again, that'll be in a later question as far as like list of expenses and shit like that.
So you publish your stuff, your own stuff yourself,
Hmm.
and you use your pen name to publish your stuff. So
Hmm.
do you have to like do like any DBA statements or anything like that for like tax purposes and whatnot?
I see what you're saying. So I actually own a LLC, which is Blackmore Publications, and all of my work is under that LLC, which again protects my assets, and then it basically just proves ownership of my work as well. So again, there's a couple different things that I use that LLC for. Um, but again, because of that, it makes it, because I have an EID with it, so it makes it easier for expenses and tax purposes and things like that. Um, but if I'm getting like into detail, there's a lot of shit that you can write off. But I can get into that later.
So while you were talking about, the
Hmm.
story behind your pen name, you
Yes.
mentioned that you were doing some healing
Hmm.
and it led to you doing some writing.
Hmm.
So, tell me a little bit about, what the majority of your stories are about, what genre you'd like to put yourself in, if any, and exactly where do you get the ideas for those wonderful stories from?
Oh, thank you. Um, So, in regards to my backstory, I grew up mixed or biracial, which is the technical term for it. Granted, I don't believe in the division aspect of it, but again, that's a whole thing that I can go into about words etymology, right? Right. But kind of growing up that way and with such stark comparisons and values and culture norms has allowed me to look at the duality or the dual perspective of life in that regard. And even, in most topics, if I'm able to, um, the ability to practice objectivity in the midst of crafting the story with, hey, this is how I feel about this particular topic, that kind of thing. Um, as far as what inspires me to create the stories or like where I get my ideas, I pull it from a multitude of things, actually. I could be inspired by a photo. I could be inspired by something in the media, or I'll pull multiple elements and just say, hey, what would this look like together? Um, and then just kind of see where it goes. The reason and this is just me speaking on my writing process, I tend to write the shitty first draft. And the reason I call it that is because the purpose for me is to figure out the theme of my story. What is it that I'm trying to say with this particular idea or thought that I have? So that's the purpose of writing it for me. Then, um, in the second draft, I go back and then I do all the edits and all of that stuff. So just again explain a little bit about my writing process. It's to figure out what the theme of the story is with the ideas that I have, and I'm taking a bunch of elements and just kind of putting it together and like, okay, see, now this is what I wanted to say. Now I know the theme of my story at that point. um as far as genres I'd like to write in, I already classify myself as a multi-genre author. And one of my actually lifelong goals, like, till I'm no longer here, um, is to just master all forms of writing within my respective style. That includes screenplays, nonfiction, poetry, essays, articles, all of it. Um, all of it. And
Cool.
I know that's very ambitious.
But we owe it to ourselves as writers to diversify. If we can write it, we should write it. That's how I've always looked at things.
Hmm.
And just building on that and building on a comment you made earlier about etymology, we're going
Yes.
to get into the meaning of a specific term.
Thank you.
Um, Professional writing. When you hear
Hmm.
the phrase professional writing, what does that mean to you?
When I think of the term professional writing, I think of it in the context of like a job aspect, if that makes sense, where it's structured. It makes sense. At least is how I think of it.
Okay, that's cool.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, do you have like a specific academic background that applies to your writing? Like, did you go to school and major in English, or, did you have like an English teacher early on, just like see your work and just kind of like just pull you under your wing? Um,
Mhm.
well, what's your educational background, in regards to writing? Or even if it's not in regards to writing, do you have
Mhm.
any kind of educational background that, we could take from this?
Absolutely. And again, thank you. I appreciate this question. I can be honest with you. I'm still in the process of learning, and I am in the midst of taking some courses um, to just, for the purposes of my own growth and being a better businesswoman. Um, so it's with that said, I can tell you that I've taken a lot of classes, but I don't have any formal degrees. Even in regards to writing, confession, I ended up failing English in community college. No, for real, dead ass. Like I failed English comp. My hand to God. So now I will give shout out to Mr. D at Prince George's Community College, bro, wherever you are. Thank you. Because I mean, literally, all right. That was the class where I finally was just like, you know what? I'm just going to write this shit like I would like a normal fan fiction or story. Cause I was a fan fiction writer at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to write it like that. And I remembered sharing it with the class. And at some point, he ends up asking me, how the hell did you test into my class? And it was that comment that made me go like, wait, huh? So again, I appreciate this person for at least giving me the thought, the the base thought of wait, maybe it's not as trash as I thought it was. That kind of thing. So, but no, I've just I study the craft in my own way. But I don't do it the conventional way at all. But no, I don't have any degrees or anything like that. And if I could go to school to get formal degrees and all of that, I absolutely would, because I believe in strengthening my craft again to the best of my ability.
That's cool because, like, the pen is
Thanks.
indeed mightier than the sword, except for when the pen is the sword.
That's right.
Yeah. So, okay,
Mhm.
moving forward, we've gotten your background, we've gotten your bits and pieces of your story. Once you have the story, we move on into like the publishing,
Yep.
and part of the publishing, is the marketing and promoting. And as I stated earlier, you wear many hats.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the hats you wear and why you chose to wear those particular hats.
I got you. So, basically, the question about all of the other stuff that I do. Thank you. Uh, I I am a plus size model. I am also a audiobook narrator, podcaster, and video game streamer. Now, does any of that mix together make sense? Probably not. But just like what I do with my writing and just my craft in general, I don't believe in limitations. In fact, I I consider myself a multidimensional being. So I'm going to have more than one interest, right? Like I consider it too linear to just have more than one thing. And quite frankly, I belonged to the anime and video game community way before I started writing. Writing didn't come in until like what I was maybe like 15, 16, 17 years old. So before that, that was the community that I belonged to. And I just thought, hey, why not just add video game streaming to it? That way, I get to chill with my supporters in a different way. So though it doesn't relate, I can say it ties into my brand, just how I choose to run my businesses, if you will.
Because, honestly, it was one of your hats that led me to your writing.
Hmm.
You know,
Yep.
you were pretty active on Twitter,
Yep.
and we have a mutual connection whom we both follow and whom follows us. And I saw something you posted, and I started following you. And I saw the other things that you were doing, like I've watched a couple of your streams on YouTube.
Thank you.
I've listened to a couple of your podcasts.
Thank you.
You know, saw some of your modeling stuff, and then I saw your books, and I was just blown away by the subject matter. You
Thank you.
know, very articulate, very creative. You know,
Mhm.
you have good storytelling ability.
Thank you.
But that's not the only thing you were doing at the time in regards to writing.
Mhm.
You were active on both sides of the creative process. You were writing, but you were also editing, and you
Yep.
were sharing a lot of editorial insight on
Mhm.
Facebook.
Yes.
So, my question being that you've worked as an editor before, as a freelance editor,
Thank you.
um, when you edit your own work and you edit someone else's work, is it the same process, or are you a little bit more tougher on your work than you would be on someone else's work?
I understand. Always. Boy, I appreciate these questions. Thank you. No, seriously, I really do. I appreciate questions. So I can admit, because I've spent a lot of time with my own craft, I am aware of words that I'm just aware of my fuck ups in my writing, if you will. Like I know where to find them. And I tend to do that when I'm listening to my work, and my process does tend to be, very tedious and very long. My process would be the same, if hired for a job, but the only difference is that I wouldn't know essentially where to look as far as like, okay, wait, maybe that doesn't make sense or that doesn't sound right to me, or something along the lines of that. And while I would hold it under the same scrutiny that I would my personal work, um, again, it's the challenge for me is just trying to figure out where that is again, while not sacrificing the integrity of the piece and not sacrificing the integrity of the artist. So that's essentially where the complication comes in for me. And again, something I can absolutely admit, but holding someone else's work under the same scrutiny as my own, absolutely. Because again, that has to do with ensuring the quality of that author's work, or ensuring the quality of that artist's work, if that makes sense. So yeah.
So, okay,
Mhm.
we've talked about editing. We've really just darted all over the place, but
I-
just like you're a diverse person that all ties together,
yep.
the diversity of the questions all tie together to create the narrative, that
Mhm.
is you.
Thank you.
So, we mentioned, social media and how we interacted on social media and how we continue to interact on social media.
Yep.
Um, Part of professional writing for new media is content creation.
Hmm.
You mentioned that you have a YouTube channel where you do video game, you stream video games and
Yep.
other forms of content. I've
Mhm.
seen you interview other writers whom I interact with.
Mhm.
How important is that social media presence for you as a writer?
I first want to start out with saying there was a time where I didn't have social media, um, and I'm perfectly okay without it. Granted, I would still struggle with it now, but I'm just kind of granting the background from in case anyone is thinking that I'm not am that I'm more partial to either, or I'm not, because of that experience. So I'm able to be partial to both, at least in regards to this answer. When it comes to having a social media presence, I do find it to be, because important is not necessarily the word, right? Like Because there are different ways to market the same product. You know, you can market the same product in person, right? And you still may reach an audience, but with social media, you have a wider reach. So again, if I'm thinking about it in that aspect, then yes, I consider social media important, or at least having some type of presence, be it one post, two posts, or however many. You know, it doesn't have to be like an insane amount like it was like when I was doing social media. I mean, I was home, I was, you know, on social media all day long. So for me, that was where the algorithm started to be like, oh shit, okay, like this person's post a lot. So, and I spent a lot of time doing that. So by no means am I expecting anyone to be like, yeah, you know, do the same. No, no, not at all. But again, social media presence, yes. Um, I do consider it important. But again, there are also other means that you can use that doesn't necessarily have to do with just content. You know, you can also pay for advertisements too. But for me, I didn't go that route. Um, I went more of the organic route, as in the hey, let's talk about projects, and then we talk about our stories, and then we end up supporting each other, that kind of thing. So I was building organic, authentic connections within the time that I was on social media. Um, so again, if I think about it in that way, then yes, having a social media presence is very important. I agree.
Cool, cool. So, you know, most of us, we have like an end game vision, you know, a somewhere we see ourselves, you know, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
Mhm.
What's Cornelia Blackmore's end game?
The day when I can look at all of the books I've ever published on a bookshelf. Dead ass. Not even, it's very simple. But yes, that is my end game. Like where I can look at my work and have it be multiple genres, different book types, different story types, and have it be the physical representation of my life. That would be super meaningful to me. That is my end game.
Cool, cool.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Um, well, I think that actually covers just about everything that I had. Some stuff you even kind of technically answered without me actually asking that.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate you taking the time out, you know, to just like spend time with me and talk about writing, you know, something that, you know, we both love and
Yes.
adore, and you know, helping me get this A so I can continue like my long streak of A's into the world of academic excellence. Yeah, it's just
Got it.
awesome. I will drop your links in the write up I do for this class so that
Okay.
the other students and the professor, you know, when they read everything over, if they want to go check your work out, they can most definitely do so.
Yeah.
Appreciate you taking time out once again, and I'm going to stop recording right now.
Bye, guys.
Missing someone